So, if it's all right, can we start by talking about Virgin Galactic and Cosmic Girl,
Yeah.
and what was due to happen, I think, tomorrow, but has now been postponed. Can you tell us a bit about what Cosmic Girl is and the launch that you were hoping to happen from Cornwall?
Yeah, so Virgin Orbit is basically a company that we developed over the last few years, which using one of our old Virgin Atlantic 747s, and then attaching to it a giant rocket, which we've developed in Mojave in America. That then the 747 goes up to about 40,000 feet. We drop the rocket from the 747. It will go from, ultimately 0 to 17,500 miles an hour into orbit, dropping off satellites. And this is something that's never been done before from European soil. We plan to do the first launch from Europe within the next 4 weeks. And yeah, very, very excited to be able to do that.
Not least because the space industry is burgeoning, some of it in the UK as well, and getting the satellites that need to get up there in a regular, repeatable fashion is clearly very important. Why is it not happening in the UK? What's held you back from being able to do it so far?
Well, we first of all had to get regulatory permission to do it, which we should have in the next sort of couple of days, and obviously, you know, we would love to be able to do it regularly from the UK, and as far as the future is concerned, I'm sure we'll have discussions with the British government to see whether they would like us to regularly base a 747 in Cornwall. So hopefully it can continue to, you know, fly. You know, we can continue to offer the service for many years to come.
Has it been frustrating trying to get that approval, trying to get the ear, trying to get the, you know, trying to push it forward?
I think regulatory processes always take time, you know, I suspect we most likely should have continued to operate in America whilst we were going through that process. But you know, these things take time, or you know, in any countries, and I don't think Britain was any more frustrating than anywhere else.
And do you see that the delivery of satellites taking things rather than people up there as the future of particularly Virgin Orbital and Virgin in space?
No, I think from Virgin Orbit's point of view, that is its mission, and then Virgin Galactic's mission is to take people into space. I think that the amount of people who would love the opportunity to go to space is gigantic. I mean, it's almost infinite. If we over the years can start getting the price of taking people to space down, and so we are building, you know, a number of new spaceships and a number of new motherships in order to, you know, in order to you know, we've got 800 people already signed up to go to space, and more people signing every week. So I think they're both equally important. You know, the satellites, by putting satellites into space, I mean, we may not be able to be talking to each other without satellites in space. Satellites can, you know, check on what's the degradation of rainforests, the illegal fishing. They can check on what's going on in Ukraine. They can, you know, there's a whole raft of different things that satellites can do. And I think, you know, people who go to space come back, I think, transformed in a positive way. There's a wonderful book called The Overview Effect that interviews of all the people who've been to space, and they've you know, it's beautiful to read how it's affected them.
What would you say to the criticism that this is billionaires playing around in space. You know, whether it's you, whether it's Jeff Bezos, you know, you're just having I mean, it must be an incredible experience going up there, but it's billionaires playing around.
I would simply say that that private enterprise that have sort of taken over somewhat from NASA have brought the cost of space travel down to a fraction of the price that it was before, have brought the cost of the environmental effect on space travel down to a fraction of what it was before, and that's the advantage of entrepreneurs and enterprise going into government businesses. They you know, I think we know how to do these things you know, more efficiently and more environmentally friendly, and you know, the world will benefit from it. I mean, you know, the moon landing, there was no particular reason for it, but as a result of the moon landing, you know, incredible technologies were spawned off it, and the same will apply to having, you know, having three entrepreneurs competing in the space sector.
Yes.
There will be enormous amounts of benefits as a result.
Well, given it was a race, I mean, getting to the moon was clearly a race back in the day. But yeah, as you say, you were racing against other billionaires. How pleased were you to be the first to beat Mr. Bezos?
Do you know, those? I hate the word billionaire. I mean,
Why do you hate it?
I see myself as somebody who loves to create things, and you know, I mean, for instance, that, you know, 38 years ago, I created Virgin Atlantic with one secondhand 747, and you know, and 38 years later, that, you know, the team there are still as motivated and happy working for the company as they were 38 years ago, and it's offering real competition to British Airways. More recently, you know, we've created, I think, the best cruise line, Virgin Voyages in the world, where, you know, people who go on it absolutely love it and are coming back for more. And I think we've got all the details right. Now, I've never thought of going into these businesses with the idea of making lots of money. What I've tried to do is create things that people like and that enhance the Virgin brand and the reputation, and that at the end of the year more money comes in than goes out, and so I think you know, calling somebody by, you know, by their, you know, by their wealth is slightly demeaning. I think that you know, that I am an entrepreneur. And I'm proud of what.
I wonder then to what extent you feel that actually there's a bit of an underappreciation or a lack of appreciation about what that process of exploring, engineering, building, creating, and yes, maybe at the end of the month more money comes in than goes out, what it actually brings, that sort of capitalist model perhaps has been under a bit of attack recently, and people don't appreciate the benefits of what private enterprise can actually bring.
I think that's true. I mean, I think a lot of people do appreciate it, and I think there are some that don't. I mean, you know, if I you know, there's a documentary series on HBO called you know, called Branson, which has just come running, and you know, it shows that, you know, here as a young boy, you know, with £200 from my mum being able to sell a necklace that she found on the street, and which the police, nobody claimed. You know, we used that £200 to build the Virgin Empire. You know, whether it was record companies or whatever, but you know, so, you know, I think I've employed nearly 1.5 million people in my life.
I was going to say that it's brought greater benefit than just for yourself, which is what people see. They see you and they, you know, understand everything that you've done to get to the point where you are. But actually, you've employed a hell of a lot of people. You created competition to drive prices down, whether it's on the trains, on planes, or in space.
Yeah, I mean, I'm that would be my defense.
Well, let me put to you something that you said as you reached the edge of space, which was just, I mean, I can't imagine what that must have been like. But you said to the next generation of dreamers, if we can do this, just imagine what you can do. I wonder what you would be dreaming of doing if you were starting again now.
So a business is simply coming up with an idea that will make other people's lives better, and that's it in a nutshell. So, and so I keep my eyes open all the time for situations where I'm frustrated. Originally with Virgin Atlantic, I was just frustrated because I couldn't get from one island back to Necker Island because the plane was bumped, and I decided, screw that, let's ring up Boeing and see if we could start an airline. So I think people just need to keep their eyes open all the time for what frustrates them, and whether they could do it better. I mean, let's say take the war on drugs. I mean, not a business, but the war on drugs has been an abject failure for the last 60 years, and most of my lifetime. As a businessman, I would have closed it down 59 years ago. But what must not happen is that in the next 60 years, that war on drugs continues for another 60 years, because it's causing so much abject misery, and so what needs to happen is that drugs should be treated as a health problem, not a criminal problem, and people should be helped and brought to become normal members of society again, and warned of the dangers, but not criminalized. And I can go through lots of different areas in society which I'd love to see reformed.
Well, let me ask you about one, because it's one that I talk about a fair bit, actually, is the science around psychedelics and mental health, where there's been a lot of scientific discovery. Businesses have popped up in America. It's a very, very burgeoning industry. It's starting to happen in the UK as well, but governments here are slow to adopt the mindset of drugs as potential treatments, or these kinds of prescribed drugs as treatments, perhaps because of that mindset about the war on drugs. Do you think the UK government, or governments in the UK generally, are too slow to act on these issues, that there's an ideological block there?
Yes, I mean they're definitely too slow to act. If you take America, and just take America and cannabis, the different states experimented in different ways. So some states legalized, some states legalized medical marijuana, you could actually then see what worked and what didn't work. Now, what has been proven in America is that it didn't see an explosion of people using marijuana. What it resulted in was a lot of tax going back for health and for education and for drug rehabilitation centers and drink centers and so on. But not that, all the money that was going into the underworld now goes back into the state, and people can be warned of the danger of, say, smoking skunk, which is going to mess with the mind, but they can go into a shop and they can make sure they get something that is pure, and so Britain, British politicians don't seem to be brave to educate the public. I mean, I know when you talk to them one-to-one, they know the right thing to do, but they're not brave enough, I think, just to talk to the public and explain the logic of why they should make these changes and why they should experiment more.
That says something awful about the way we do politics, doesn't it? that behind closed doors, they know the right thing, they know the science, they understand what needs to change. People are sort of doing it anyway. I mean, people are self-medicating with all kinds of things, whether it's cannabis or other drugs. What do you think it says about our politics that politicians don't feel able to be brave in that fashion?
Well, look, I'm part of something called the Global Drug Commission. It has 18 ex-presidents on it. It had Kofi Annan, the president of Switzerland, the president of Mexico, the president, a lot of ex-presidents. I'm the only entrepreneur on it. With one voice, we've done a lot of research. We say we speak out and say that drugs should be treated as a health problem, not a criminal problem. But equally, in fairness to current governments, those 18 presidents didn't do what they should have done when they were in positions of power, and they all acknowledge that, and they all feel really bad about it. I mean, genuinely bad about it, which is why they're spending enormous amounts of their time trying to educate younger prime ministers and younger politicians to do the right thing.
Let me just ask you very finally about, given your global overview, what you make of the situation Britain finds itself in economically, the lowest growth of any G7 economy, all kinds of, at the moment we're talking where they've got all kinds of strikes going on. Do you see Britain as a good place to do business, as a place to invest?
We have a lot of Virgin companies in Britain, I think as far as new money is concerned, we would not necessarily invest our new money in Britain at the moment. We're more likely to invest it in America or in some other countries. And I think, look, I've made no secret of my views on Brexit, both before and after Britain's referendum. And I think that, what the government needs to do is to urgently seek a mutually beneficial relationship with the EU. It's the world's largest trading bloc. It needs to be, at the least, something similar to the deal Switzerland has. I think both for the people of Britain and for companies in Britain to flourish, Britain needs to reduce its trade barriers and it needs to reduce its red tape. I'm afraid Brexit's costing Britain something like 2% GDP per year. When you compound that onto the other problems that Britain currently has, it's devastating, and it has resulted in Britain becoming, really the poorest country as far as growth is concerned, almost in the world. I mean, it's really sad to see.
Do you think the new you, the next entrepreneur, would be able to build their business in the manner that you did from scratch, determined with the frustration of the world around them to go on and do it? Do you think they'd be able to in Britain at the moment?
Well, look, we support literally thousands of startup companies in Britain through our Virgin Startup loans, and we mentor them. And despite the difficulties, a lot of them are doing as best they can. They're frustrated. They would love the government to be brave and make some changes. But they'll win through. And
have to move.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, I've always said you should not. Just because you're born in one country, you shouldn't necessarily, just think of the world is a big place. There's so many opportunities around the world. If things are tough in one country, you can trade in another country. And I mean, obviously, it's more difficult now in Europe, but there are plenty of other countries you're allowed to trade in. So you just have to be adaptable.
Terrific to talk to you. Thank you so much for giving so much of your time and being so generous with it. Let me just ask one final question about the documentary. What will people learn about you that they didn't know already watching this?
I learned a lot. I don't know where they get hold of this incredible footage, but I've had my house burned down. I've had it been blown down. I thought I'd lost everything, but no. Look, I think there are a couple of generations that don't even know about the adventure side. For instance, the ballooning or the boating or the lengths we went to try to put Virgin on the map and the quite exciting adventures we had in the process. I think people don't know about British Airways' Dirty Tricks campaign against Virgin and the extraordinary lengths they went to try to put us out of business when we were a fledgling airline. There's lots of things like that I think and I think it's quite a gripping, the way I think it's quite a gripping documentary series, unbiased, but we definitely, anyway, my grandkids were at the edge of their seats. That's all I can say, if nobody else, but anyway, enjoy.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Sir Richard. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.